Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Settle for More podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Wright, and I have designed this space for you. Yeah, you, the woman who is ready to walk out on her fears, step into her dreams, and own her power by shifting her mindset from feeling not enough to taking action and to becoming more than enough whilst settling for more. Well, hey there, and welcome back. I know what you're thinking. You probably thought when you listened to the last episode that, oh my goodness, I'm not going to hear from Nicole again for another year. Surprise! I'm back. And today I'm actually recording from my beautiful she shed that I built last year. I think it was over the summertime, between the summer and the fall. And it's a beautiful shed. It's a 10 by 12 shed that I got custom built. I got it insulated. There's light, so I have electricity. My plants are with me, and this is where I spend most of my days. I'm looking outside now, and I can't wait for the time to warm up. I see some of my plants are trying to peek through. We had a little bit of flurry last night, so I'm really hoping that they won't damage my plants, but that's where I'm recording from today. Feeling really good. It's a Friday, the end of the week. I had an amazing week. And as most of you know, I am an executive coach. So I coach a lot of leaders. And sometimes I listen and I lean in for, certain tips or not tips, certain themes that comes out of the conversations that I have. And even with friends sometimes. I was talking to a friend of mine and I recognized by what she was sharing that what she was doing was a lot of people pleasing. And so we really spent some time unpacking that, exploring that. And I really got into a discussion with her on strategies. And I thought it would be really important to share with my audience as I think about how, as women, especially women over 40, how are we showing up in the world, right? So today I want to really dive into the realm of people pleasing and this subconscious behavior, which is, it's really often subconscious behavior that has a significant impact on so many areas and aspects of our lives. So we'll spend some time today really uncovering the signs of people pleasing. We'll take a look at what are the reasons. So what is causing individuals to really demonstrate or display this type of behavior. And last but not least, I'm always sharing some strategies that you can think about implementing if you recognize that these are signs in yourself and you're seeing that you are either a recovering people pleaser or some of us still have that role. I know from time to time I catch myself really complying and really trying to please and really trying to be conservative and having that sense of belonging, right? And as human beings, sometimes we do this to protect ourselves. So, if you find that you tend to do that from time to time, I want to offer that you release any judgment and let's just lead into it and see what's possible. And so I think that if we're talking about a topic like this, what is really critical for us to do is to really recognize or pleaser tendencies, right? And so to identify if you're a people pleaser or sometimes you lean into that type of behavior, here are some questions I want you to begin with, right? A lot of things begin with some assessment, some reflection, introspection, and really identifying areas that are resonating with you as things that you're doing. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself. So the first question is, when receiving requests, do I tend to prioritize others' potential disappointment over my own capacity or desire to help? Really important. What are you prioritizing when there's a request? Here's another question that you may want to sit with. Do you often regret instances where you have prioritized your needs, and when doing that, there's this feeling of selfishness or you feel like you're overly assertive? Do you have some guilt around that, right? When you're choosing to prioritize and then you're regretting those instances because you're feeling as though, oh my goodness, that was a selfish thing to do. Here is another question, and this is going to really hit home for a lot of us. Have I altered my life direction based on others' opinion, ignoring my true goals and values? Ooh, that's a deep one. Have you altered your life's direction based on, other people's opinions? Really sit with that question. Here's another one for you. After helping others, do you often have this feeling that you're being underappreciated, or a sense of being just resentful because you've given too much? And do you sometimes feel like your efforts and your energy are overlooked? Just some things for you to think about. Here is another important one for you. How comfortable am I now, in this moment, today, in this phase of your life? How comfortable am I in expressing my needs and setting boundaries compared to the past? So, are you getting better at it? Do you find that you're complying more? What's happening there? Really important. Now, people pleasing is something that we actually learned. It's a learned behavior. And the behavior often really stems from a deep-seated need for approval, acceptance, and validation. And if you think about it, it can be traced back to various factors. So the first one I want us to talk about is the childhood experiences that we have from time to time. So many of us really learned the ropes, the ins and outs, how to perfect and master people pleasing in our formative years, right? If you think about when we were children, how we might have received more attention or affection when we conformed to what was expected of us. So that didn't happen in my case because I was a child and a half to deal with, right? Wasn't a child that was conforming at all. And did you find that you find that children are rewarded for conforming, right? I know when I was growing up, right? I'm a 70s baby. So when I was growing up, children are to be seen and not heard. And so we tend to comply to that. Or sometimes we find that the opposite happens. So if we're not getting the attention that we are yearning for or needing, we tend to please others, right? We tend to yearn for their permission, their validation, right? Because we're longing for that affection. And so we end up people pleasing. And so this early conditioning really sets the stage. And it sets the stage in teaching us that our values are tied to how well we can meet the expectations of others, and not the qualities that lie within us. And so as we grow, we move into the world, right? And so there is that societal conditioning. Because society, believe it or not, often glorifies selflessness, right? And they'll talk about self-prioritization. Sometimes we hear that you must be sacrificial, and you must be selfless and give up your needs and your desires to serve the greater good of the world. Sometimes we're bombarded with messages that praise the fact that putting others first, sometimes at the expense of our own health and happiness, is probably what we should be doing. So this societal norm can really lead us to believe that our worth is measured by our utility to others, so how valuable others are seeing us. And this, believe it or not, compels us to engage in people-pleasing behavior to feel that sense of being valued and accepted. Here's another one. The fear of rejection. Come on now, nobody likes to be rejected, right? So the dread of disapproval or rejection is a powerful motivator behind people pleasing. So let's just contemplate how this fear influences our interaction. So we might find ourselves saying yes to tasks or to commitments that we'd rather avoid, simply because the thought of someone being disappointed or upset with us is unbearable, right? So we're saying yes to all these things and we really don't want to, but we're afraid of being rejected, right? This fear can also be very persuasive, that it dictates so much of our behavior when we find ourselves leaning right, into acting against our better judgment and deep desires. So we're it's almost like we're abandoning, aborting what's important to us, and we're leaning into the needs of others, sacrificing our own health, our own happiness, even our own joy. Sometimes we people please because in those moments our self-esteem is low, right? When we feel, like we're not enough, when we don't value ourselves or recognize our worth, and recognizing that it's not really tied to the opinions of others. So when our self-esteem is low and we don't see ourselves as enough, and we're leaning and looking to others, their recognition, to really validate our worth, we're more likely to seek external validation from people pleasing. So this lack of self-esteem creates a cycle, right? Where we continually look outside of ourselves for affirmation. And we reinforce the belief within us that we must please others to be worthy of attention and love. My heart breaks as I think about that. And so as you think about the way we move, and sometimes the conversations that we have with ourselves, right? Sometimes we have conversations that are positive. Sometimes we have conversations that are negative. And sometimes we have conversations that really sabotages our growth or development. And so I want to introduce the concept to you of a saboteur. And these are mind patterns that we have sometimes that goes against our best judgment. And one of the saboteurs that we have, there are actually 9 of them, well, 10 if you include the judge. So one of the saboteurs that I want to talk about today is the pleaser saboteur. And so the pleaser saboteur really represents an aspect of our personality that seeks acceptance and love through acts of pleasing, helping, rescuing, or flattering others at the expense of our own needs, right? So it's not that authentic connection. We're making the sacrifice. We're sacrificing ourselves, our own needs, to be able to help rescue and flatter others. And so when we see this behavior happening, there's some internal beliefs and fear that we have. The pleaser operates under the belief that love and affection are conditional. They're earned through pleasing others. And so when we dissect this belief system and examine how it might lead into a fear of asserting your own needs, driven by worry that those actions that you take may result in rejection or abandonment. So there's an internal belief and there's a fear that surrounds it. If you think about when we're people pleasing, the thought patterns and feelings that we have. So pleasers often engage in a mental narrative. So this is where we're having conversations with ourselves that glorifies self-sacrifice and views self-assertion as being selfish. Ooh. And so when you pause to really examine those thought patterns and the feelings that come, usually it's the feeling of guilt, anxiety, resentment. These are the feelings that you find will arise when the pleaser saboteur perceives themselves as falling short of others' expectation when their efforts go unacknowledged. And of course, sometimes we try to convince ourselves. So there are some lies that the saboteur will tell us, this pleaser saboteur, when it's active, when it's taking over, when it's running the shows, right? In Jamaica, we say when it run things, right? So there are some lies that it will tell. So pleasers, or the pleaser saboteur rather, frequently when it's active, right, it's telling lies to justify the behavior, such as, I don't do this for myself, I really do this to help others. Or, if I don't help them, no one will. So I'm going in to rescue. I'm putting on my Superman's cape and I'm rescuing. And so I want you to pause and ask yourself, have you been telling yourself the story? Have you been listening to the lies of the saboteur? Now, it also impacts our relationship and it impacts us directly. So the pleaser saboteur behavior affects not only the individual's self-perception and the emotional well-being of the person that is people pleasing, but also their relationship with others. If you often and constantly prioritize the needs of others, you will eventually foster dependency. You will provoke feelings of obligation or guilt in others. So we teach people how to treat us, right? And ultimately, we start feeling undervalued or even overlooked. So we want to really ask ourselves, what is the impact that people pleasing is having on my relationships? How am I training individuals to lean on me at all times? Why do I do this? Right? And the impact to that over a period of time, we find that eventually we start losing ourselves, of losing that sense of personal identity. When we constantly prioritize the needs of others, their desires, their wants, their wishes, it can lead to a loss of self-awareness and personal identity. And so people pleaser often suppress their true feelings, their preferences, and their values, leading to a life that doesn't reflect their authentic self. We're masking up. Remember, we spoke about that in the last episode. Over a period of time, you will definitely experience resentment and burnout. It is exhausting. Constantly putting others first can lead to feelings of resentment, especially if the efforts are not reciprocated or acknowledged. And over a period of time, this can really lead to having or experiencing emotional burnout as the individual feels drained and unfulfilled. So you know where we're going with this. Then there's the stress, and our mental health is impacted, right? So the people-pleasing behavior can cause significant stress and often lead to us overcommitting, right? Which means that we have no time to take care of our personal needs. So there's no personal time or me time. And this chronic stress can contribute to mental issues such as anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. When we spend a lot of time really fulfilling the needs of others and pleasing others, we tend to neglect our own needs, whether it's our physical needs, our emotional needs, or even sometimes our psychological needs. And again, we can see how this can lead to stress-related illnesses and can really impact all of your life, the satisfaction and the fulfillment and happiness that you should be getting. Another impact of that is we position ourselves to be manipulated and abused, right? So when we're people pleasing, we're at a higher risk of being manipulated or taken advantage of by others. So the inability to say no or assert boundaries can make people pleasers vulnerable to individuals who seek to really exploit their accommodating nature, right? We often have difficulty in relationships, right? Because we may seem too needy, right? We may seem as though we want to overgive. And while in the beginning of relationships or partnership, this may be great, right? Because we want to show our best selves and our best side. Over a period of time, what happens is that it can prevent the development of genuine balanced relationship. You know, I remember having a conversation with a family member of mine who met an amazing guy and decided that she wanted to prescribe for him what he should be doing, how he should be doing it, when he should be doing it. And she said, but if I don't train him, he won't know what to do. And I said to her, you will never know his true self. Because all these things that he's doing is because you have laid out for him step by step, brick by brick, day by day, how you want to be treated, which is great. But when you are almost forcing him to do certain things, you don't get to know who he is as a person. He's just showing up for you. And so, as people pleasers, sometimes we may attract partners or friends who take advantage of our accommodating nature. Additionally, sometimes the lack of honest communication and connection cause us to have suppressed feelings that can lead to unresolved conflict and dissatisfaction in relationships. I want us to start thinking about that. Awesome. I needed to plug in my laptop before it died. The fear of rejection is also something that could impact our lives. So we don't take certain risks, we don't make certain moves, we don't move towards our goal because we're constantly wondering if we're going to be rejected or if there's going to be some disapproval, right? And this can really paralyze and really prevent your ability to make decisions or take action that are in your best interest. So I want you to start thinking about, how am I showing up in the world? How am I showing up in my relationships? Why do I people please? Do I find sometimes that I am really complying a lot? And what that looks like to others is I may show up looking passive. I may show up looking like I'm really longing for this sense of belonging, that kind of needy kind of feeling. Is it that I don't express my views and my opinions? And why? So spend some time going back to like the root cause. Is it from your childhood? That could be a possibility. Is it how you were socialized? What are some of the factors that influence this behavior when you see your pleaser saboteur active and has fully taken over in certain relationships, in certain environments, in certain situations, right? So it could be in your work environment. Are you the person who's always saying yes, 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 yes? And so you're working so hard. You're up early in the mornings, you're closing that laptop late at night because you don't know how to say no and you're afraid to say no. Which brings me into some tips. So let's talk about some tips for overcoming people pleasing. Again, it's not going to be overnight because we've been people pleasing now for years. It's going to be over a period of time. But I want you to get into the habit of practicing saying no, right? And start with the small things. So no is not only a right, but it is a necessary skill for maintaining personal boundaries and well-being. So start off by declining minor requests when they don't align with your priorities or your capacity. Over a period of time, you're building confidence and you're leaning away from people pleasing, right? And you could say something like, if you're at work, I understand the importance of this project, but I'm currently at capacity with my work. Or you could say, I definitely can get this done, but I'll need to take some things off my plate. I want you to also, my second tip for you is prioritize self-care. So self-care is about more than the occasional indulgence, even though your girl loves that, right? It's about the consistent practice of really taking care of your mental, your physical, and your emotional health. So start incorporating those self-care activities into your daily routine, like reading, meditating, exercising. I didn't ride my bike this morning. Exercising, going for walks, journaling, right? And I remember I had a client who really worked on reducing her people-pleasing behavior significantly by prioritizing weekly sessions with me to hold her accountable. She'd also do daily walks in nature to help her reconnect with her own needs and feelings. Make sure that you're taking some time for yourself. You also want to set clear boundaries so people understand what your boundaries are. because when you set these boundaries, they really help to define your limits. So where your limits lie, how others should treat you. Start by identifying areas in your life where you know that your boundaries are lacking or not being respected. Then communicate these boundaries clearly and assertively to others, right? For instance, you may often feel pressured into working late. You may say to your team, I really value our projects, right? But I need to leave on time to attend some personal commitments. And you can offer that, let's find a way to manage the workload within regular hours. I notice that sometimes, particularly for women, we don't set boundaries at work because we're afraid we may lose our jobs, etc. We need to start setting those boundaries. Last but not least, I could not end this episode without sharing with you to seek support. And overcoming people pleasing that we've been doing most of our lives requires exploring the underlying issues. The issues that can really be influencing the behavior, but we can effectively address this with professional support. So I'm talking about your counselors, I'm talking about your therapist, I'm talking about your coaches, right? Who can provide insights into the origins of your people-pleasing behavior and really help you to develop healthier patterns of interactions, right? So find these groups, these individuals who are maybe on the same path. I'm always saying that. Get professional help if you recognize that this is something that is impacting me. Pray about it as well, right? You bring them before God if praying is your thing. But lean into those things that will support your growth, your development, and reduce the people-pleasing behaviors and habits that we tend to have. You see, when we do these things, what happens is that we reduce ourselves. We don't value ourselves. Our self-esteem, our self-worth gets low. And so I'm offering that you go back to the 5 questions I asked in the beginning. Do you prioritize others' potential disappointment over your own capacity to help? Do you often regret when you have prioritized your needs? Right? Have you altered your life's direction based on the opinion of others, ignoring your own goals, your own values, your own dream? After helping others, do you often feel underappreciated or even resentful? And last but not least, how comfortable are you in expressing your needs and setting boundaries? I'm offering that this be the time that you decide to quiet that pleaser saboteur. Listen to your inner leader. Because hey, when you do, you are in fact settling for more. We'll talk soon.